Hello, hello, welcome to the stream. Today we are going to do some session prep for my home game, which is Hot Springs Island. I streamed some campaign prep previously, but today we're doing some session prep, and that's because I've been streaming Stardew Valley every day this week so far, and I wanted to do at least one tabletop stream. So here it is. Also, since knew I'd be streaming Stardew Valley every day this week, I knew I wouldn't have done any prep by now. So why not kill two birds with one stone and stream my session prep? Then I make the players in my game happy, and I hopefully make you happy for seeing some tabletop content. And I can also run through a bit about how I structure my campaign notes, my prep, and we can also have a look at one of the systems I'm considering running for the next campaign stream on Thursdays. So starting Thursday next week, as I've narrowed it down to two choices, but I've not had time to look into both options. So one of them I already know fairly well, the other one I did not know so well, but sounds interesting, so we'll use some time in the stream to look into that as well. And I think this is going to be a somewhat shorter stream because honestly I don't spend that much time prepping. I normally am pretty light prep, which is supported in large part, I think, by favoring like running published settings or taking modules and smashing them together and changing up things. So generally the bones of what I'm running are already in place, and I'm just adjusting the details, making it fit better what my group wants, and adjusting things as the players inevitably change the setting. So this is probably not going to be more than 2 hours, including looking at other systems. So last week, or last time I should say, because I play on Sundays, and as I understand it, Americans say the week begins on a Sunday, which is quite strange. The week begins on a Monday. Last time was session 0 and kind of combined session 1 of my Hot Springs Island campaign. And we played through a little dungeon that I had prepared, so I didn't make this map from scratch myself. This map is from volume 1, I believe, of the 3-volume big OSR adventure path, Gods of the Forbidden North, which I'm probably never going to actually run as written due to some things in the material which I don't agree with so much. But I bought it before I knew there were things in it that I didn't like, so I may as well mine it for ideas, right? So this is a dungeon for like level 1, level 2, something like that, characters in Gods of the Forbidden North. It is a tomb, and I adjusted this into kind of a little teaching dungeon to introduce some elements of the Hot Springs Island setting. So let's jump to my session notes, and I can tell you what happened in that session. I'll then run through the dungeon, how it fit in, and I'll show off some details about the setting in the published books as well. And today we'll be looking at a bunch of PDFs of different sizes, so they'll be a little bit more janky in the display on the right-hand side. They won't be as nicely cropped as they usually are. So apologies for that. Right, so this is what my session notes look like. I use Obsidian to track my notes, and I heavily use templates. So I have a folder for session notes. I have a session note template. Whenever I create a new file, I will get something that looks like this. I do normally log which players are present, but I've removed that from my session 0 notes here, just on stream, because I don't want to share my players' names on stream. That would be a bit weird. So let's get into it. So I have the date the session took place. That can be useful. I have the in-game date, so I'm using the Golarion calendar. This game isn't taking place in Golarion. I just wanted a generic fantasy calendar, and it looks appropriate. And so our game began on the 5th of Saranith, which is kind of like the June equivalent, I think. Actually, for the calendar, I am using... hang on a moment. Oh god, how do I make this show up with my weird OBS setup? Let's see, I think if I go to studio mode, I can then make that appear. Yeah. Okay, right. Yeah, so the Galarian calendar, I'm using Donjon, donjon.bin.sh, which is a site that has a multitude of utilities. I've kind of cut the sidebar off here because I cropped my browser window, but you can see I've got the Galarian calendar. You can view it as like an actual calendar or just like a list of days. You can get it as text if that's useful. It has all of the celestial events, so like moon phases and shooting stars and so on. You can hide the celestial events if you want. You can customize the months, so how many months there are, what they're called, how long they are. Same with weeks and moons. And so this is what I'm using for. This is generally what I use for calendars. So I use this for my Ardenvool campaign as well. I made a custom calendar based on the Ardenvool settings. So here we have Saranith, and I think it's pretty clear that the names of the days are just a thin alteration of our actual days of the week. So the week begins on Moon Day, the next is Toil Day, then we have Wheel Day, we have Oath Day, which is, it's not too similar to Thursday. That's pretty different. But then we have Fire Day, Star Day, Sunday. It's only really Oath Day that's a different sounding one. It's got a 28-day, I think, lunar month. So it's a pretty understandable calendar. It just changes up the names, which is always a bit fun. So back to Obsidian. So the Session 0 stuff, there was actually very little to do because we mostly resolve this stuff over Discord, which I quite like doing. I generally don't like spending an entire session just going through prep stuff. Time is limited. We play for 3 hours a week, which is already significantly more than many groups play. But even then, just spending 3 hours on prep stuff feels kind of like a waste of time. I should begin my background music. There we go. That should fade in quietly now. Have that up a little bit more. There, I will adjust that if need be. Yeah, so I don't like spending, a whole session on prep. There are systems where that's different. If we're playing Traveller, for instance, character creation is collaborative because it has this very cool life path based character creation system where you can link your characters' backstories together as you create them. Essentially, any sort of game where group character creation is an integral part, I would want to do that in Session 0, but for your standard, D&D style adventure thing, you can do that like asynchronously. So we had all of our characters sorted out before the session, and I'd, of course, already pitched all the details of the campaign before then. I'd shared my house rules before then. So the actual Session 0 stuff was very brief. I wanted to run through just some things that hadn't come up. So I specified that we're getting XP for fighting monsters, as well as for recovering treasure. And this is because this is actually the default rules. We're using the Dolmenwood system for this campaign. Here we go, Dolmenwood. And that's the default in Dolmenwood. But in previous campaigns, I've just skipped the monster XP and only gone for gold XP because, honestly, tracking monsters that are killed is kind of a pain. But with Hot Springs Island, it has an entirely custom set of monsters, which I had to stat out myself. So let's just take, for example, the Orange Sludge, which is one of the monsters in the dungeon that the players fought in Session 1. I had to come up with these stats myself. It is based on an existing creature. This is based on the green slime in Old School Essentials, I believe. But as part of working out its stat block, I had to work out how much XP this creature is worth. Let's just get an Orange Sludge up here. Yes, the PDFs are going to look a little bit janky today. Oops, there we go. So yes, here is, well, not exactly an orange sludge, but sludge-like thing. So the orange sludges in Hot Springs Island, these are essentially elves that were melted by a magical blast wave, and they are now insane and immortal. and want to be beautiful as they once were. So I based this on, as that I believe it was a green slime. It has a couple of special abilities, so if it is killed, it will regenerate over the next 24 hours, and also your weapons can get stuck in it, and you might have to make a strength check to get your weapon out. I think I should actually zoom in on my obsidian a bit there. Can I just do that? I'll need to resize it in OBS, because that is a bit small. One moment. Let's fiddle with the OBS. You can tell that I'm doing this somewhat sleep deprived, so let's shrink. Let's crop this, then I can embiggen it. I'll crop it a bit more in this side. It's going to be a real pain getting the aspect ratio right. Nearly there. Okay, that looks like correct on the height. Now let's just uncrop there a bit. Perfect. Oh, that's so much more legible. Ah, it's actually not quite the right height. There. Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, that's much more legible now. Okay. And then lock that so I don't accidentally change it. Okay. Right, so yes, I have my orange sludge here. It has two special abilities. It will regenerate if killed, and if you hit it with a non-magical weapon, your weapon might get stuck, and you have to save to avoid that. So this isn't just the XP that a level 2 monster would give you. It has special abilities, which bumps up his XP budget. So I worked out all of these XP levels, and I thought, by God, I'm going to use them. So in this campaign, we are getting monster XP as well as treasure XP. Another thing I brought up is that in the Dolmenwood system, this system uses separate race and class, and something that I think the players had probably overlooked, and other people playing Dolmenwood might overlook, is that if you play a human, which all of my characters were, the human actually has a very cool ability. They just get, well, they have a few abilities, but humans just get a flat 10% bonus to all XP they earn, which is quite nice. So I mentioned that existed. I explained the calendar, which is the Golarion calendar. And we checked the character sheets, and I gave them all a starting rumour. So we had one Explorer, which was my, if I bring up my list of classes, the Explorer is a hunter. We had one Marine, which is the fighter, and we had one Wizard, which is a wizard. And I picked out 3 appropriate rumours for each class based on what they might have heard talking to other people like themselves. So the Explorer's rumours are about like things people have been to the island and seen. Well, they're all kind of about that. The Marines are more about enemies. And the wizards are all kind of magical. So I'll just run through these, as there's only 3 of each type. So for the Explorer, my first rumour was, there are too many predators around here. What are they all eating? It doesn't make sense. It's like someone's giving away free meat whenever we're not around. And these rumours largely came from the Hot Springs Island book. So there is an appendix, Rumours of the Elven Ruins. I looked through these. I did adjust them slightly. Rumour 2 for the Explorer was our old navigator could find islands by the ring of birds, going in and out 50 miles into the sea at every side, feeding twice a day at dawn and dusk. But this island doesn't have a ring. The birds don't leave. It's like they're trapped. And thirdly, ignore all the Explorer marks for safe or dangerous. The first ones were legit, but then the Lizardmen started copying them to get people killed. So they're all good practical. I guess not really practical. The third one is very practical, but they're more about like the weirdness of the island and how being there is dangerous. For the Marine, we've got, if a golem follows you and you make for the ship, it walks down the ruined street and into the sea like it isn't there. Then it follows the empty roads and stands under the ship, 10 fathoms down, looking up, but they won't go beyond the sunken town. So this is weird. There's like a strange creature thing. But then we end with a little practical advice here. The golems won't leave the town. So a clever player would realize, that means that the golems are kind of constrained in what areas they interact with. And so if we're being chased, maybe just leaving the property boundaries or whatever could help. And it might help in some situations. Rumour 2 is, a captain I knew had a severed head he said was from a snake. Looks just like him though. Kept it in a glass jar in his bedroom. Said he used it instead of a mirror to shave. But that wouldn't work, would it? Which I think is a really fun one because it just sounds like complete nonsense. But there is actually a specific creature. The Muttering Serpent. Which is that. It is a snake that has kind of mirror scales and telepathic abilities that make you see your own face if you look at it. And the third one was, don't forget you can smash through the walls in the shit houses. Just don't try it with stone. Saved my life more than once. So, a practical tip. And then the wizards. There's graffiti hundreds of years old which says it's from escaped prisoners, but they have modern names. Some of them sound like explorers who've only just gone to the island. I included this because it was weird and interesting, but I have scoured this book and I don't see any weird time loop shenanigans, so I'm not actually sure what that's referring to. I mean, obviously I could introduce time loop shenanigans if I want to, but it is a bit odd that the book comes with a rumour that I don't think is supported by the text. Oh, I've just had a thought. So there is one time loop place, but I understood that to be like a kind of recording rather than a loop. Let's have a look. So we have a trap. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't think this is a time loop that would send you way back in time. Very strange. Okay, back to rumours. The second rumour the wizard had was they used elementals as magic batteries. A lot of that stuff's still around. You might think a sword as hot as lava is cool, but if any elementals see you using something like that, they'll have it out for you. And this is an element I introduced in my dungeon. And the third one was, if you speak the elf tongue out in the forest, birds go silent for a mile around, like the world's biggest hawk just flew by. Now, the setup for our campaign was that the player characters arrived here. Whether they knew each other beforehand doesn't really matter. They all know each other now. They've arrived at Swordfish Port. They've come following tales of riches and adventure, but they were rebuffed by the Adventurers Guild for being unskilled nobodies, which is fair enough because they're level 1 characters with 0 XP. And so after an angry night at too many taverns, they found a man with a boat and arranged to head out to the island unofficially. This man with the boat is a man named Ruston Bailey. And now let's look at this dungeon. So in the session, we essentially played through two things. We played through this dungeon, which I didn't expect them to fully complete, but they pretty much did. And then we played out some of the journey back from the dungeon to safety. They're not safe yet. They are traps on the island, and that is what I want to think through in my prep. But first, I want to run through what this dungeon is, because I was quite proud of this dungeon. So, as I said, this map, I didn't make it from scratch myself. This is a modified version of a map from Volume 1 of Gods of the Forbidden North. I just made a few slight changes. So this was a tomb, and it had like sarcophagi and things in it. I just edited those out. I've added in this exit staircase over here, and I renumbered the rooms. And let's see what else. So this thing here, this is actually an underground river, and it pours out in a waterfall here. I blocked it off and decided this is actually a chasm from a geological fault. So for my entire dungeon, this kind of north and east portion beyond the chasm is 30 feet up. And the chasm just extends up and down as far as can be seen. So the ground split open, the two halves shifted height at some point, everything is all cracked and broken, and I didn't expect them to make it across the chasm because there are monsters around, but they did. So I thought when I was thinking of this dungeon, I thought it'd be useful to kind of write down some ideas of things I wanted to introduce, as this is the first thing they're encountering on the island. So I came up with a little backstory. So this was once part of a rich elf's underground play area for when he felt like slumming it like a dwarf, now broken by an ancient cataclysm. And I kind of divided it into two main areas. So this like paved area, this is all very nice. It has kind of intricate gold work everywhere. It all looks very, very good. And then we have this western portion, which looks more natural. I decided this was an artificially constructed mine. So our elf guy, he had arranged to have a dwarven mine, in quotes, built that he could go in when he felt like being like a poor person. But anyone who's familiar with mines or mining, or who just spends a lot of time in here, will realize something is wrong. It feels too artificial. The players didn't spend enough time in there to have that realization, but it's a little Easter egg I included to indicate something is wrong. So I had 4 goals from this. One of them I failed on, but the goals were to introduce common elements of the setting, to introduce some new monsters, to give out some interesting utility magic items, and to not yield all of its secrets on the first delve. I also came up with an emergency procedure to get a backup PC if need be, if someone dies, and there could just be an adventure in the next room, or abseiling down the chasm, or arriving on the little beach, or whatever. They also had an NPC companion with them, the man with the boat. He is also a backup PC. And specifically, just going into a bit more detail, so the elements I wanted to introduce. The elves of the Isle of Light, they were all perverted drug addicts, who thought nothing of enslaving elementals to use them as tools or decoration. So this first room they can enter, this is actually a very, very large bedroom. There is a huge statue of 3 very naked elves engaged in, well, use your imagination, right here. And on the ceiling above the bed there is a big gold-plated, like big beaten gold mirror. And over here in this little room here, in these like north and south niches, there are lamps made of fire elementals. Like fire elementals that have been magically bound and just made to produce light and do nothing else. I also want to give out one of the big details of the setting. So, scattered across the island, hidden in many places, most of them like left up to the GM where exactly they are, there are hidden paintings with nereids, so water elementals, trapped inside. And this is one of the big backstory things of Hot Springs Island. The elves attracted a bunch of nereids to their island and just trapped them in paintings to be used as decoration. And so the free nereids now, they're one of the big factions on the island, and this is one of the things that could really change the setting. If you engage with this plotline, if you seek out and free the nereids, then that could have massive ramifications. As the elves are still around, even if they're not on the island, they've just moved elsewhere. So, in this room up here, against this back wall, hanging precariously over the chasm, there is one of these nereid paintings, and is illuminated by the light from the fire elemental lamps. I also wanted to reveal there's treasure everywhere but it's often bulky and hard to recover. So there's a big beaten gold mirror on the ceiling here. There are oil paintings in here. There are gems like studded into the walls of this artificial mine, but you need to prize them out, and it's really hard to get them. There's also magical glowing gold set into all the ceilings of this place, providing light, but again, you have to like get up to ceiling height and prize it out with a dagger or whatever. There's fine clothes in here, so there is a lot of stuff, but it's hard to get. And finally, there's some sort of geographic upheaval in the ancient past. So that's this chasm area, and I was quite happy that the players did in fact speculate on this. When I described the other side of the chasm being 10 feet away and 30 feet up, they were wondering like what could have happened, what could have caused that. And so as they see more evidence of this sort of geological upheaval elsewhere in the island, they'll start to put it together. Oh, it wasn't just something weird in that that first dungeon we explored. This happened all over the place. I want to introduce new monsters. So there are 3 new monsters in this place. We have the the standard giant bats and giant rats. We also have the orange sludge, which they encountered and they defeated, but it is going to regenerate, and in fact it has regenerated by now. So if they go back, it will be back. They did start to speculate about the nature of the orange sludge. They were like, why is this thing producing like appendages that look like arms? At one point I described like a horrible gooey face like pressing out of it. And someone said, I think I might know what happened to the elf who owned this place, which is exactly what I wanted them to think. There are also the astral spinners. So these, if I just get it up in the field guide, these are kind of your basically your standard giant spiders, except if they fully wrap you in their webs, you are taken into the astral plane, where you will then be eaten by the by another previous victim of the spiders, who they have essentially turned into a spider nest. So it's a pretty gruesome method of killing. I just kind of took the giant spider stat block. I dropped them down to 1 hit die rather than keeping them as 2, because they have a bunch of special abilities. I decided that their poison and their webs, they can entangle you and essentially reduce your ability to attack and break free. If you're completely wrapped, you then, as I said, I'll take it into the astral plane. You just start dying, and at that point you can only be saved by magic weapons. So they're pretty tough creatures if you don't have any magic weapons yet. The players saw these but kept a safe distance, which was a good move. And also down the chasm, if the players were foolish enough to like abseil down 200 odd feet, which I'm pretty sure they wouldn't be able to because they don't have the tools for that at the moment, they would have encountered the tunnels of some crystalback widar, which are kind of horrible. I statted these out as bears. The timeless advice, just use bears. I statted these out as bears, but they're kind of like the creations of evil hags who live elsewhere in the islands. I wanted to give out an interesting magical item, so this room number 3 here. Is this capturing my mouse? Okay, yeah, that seems to take a while to show up. Okay, this room number 3 here. This was a closet, so it's got lots of fine, but now rusted and moth-eaten clothes. But there were 2 things there that were available. First is a robe of billowing. I describe this as a burgundy robe with gold trim and like little gold like clasp to hold it shut. And the robe of billowing is a completely useless but very cool magic item, because the wearer can mentally command it to billow dramatically around themselves. So I said, like when one of the players of course tried it on, I said, when they put it on, it billowed dramatically around their shoulders as they put it on. It looks very cool. And when they like finally made it out of here and they're trekking across the island, I described like that player, the robe was dramatically billowing out behind them. They looked awesome as they moved through the jungle. And so I'm just going to keep dropping in like little bits of narrative like that, and it gives no benefit whatsoever, but it's quite a fun item. The actual utility item they found in here was a pair of lenses of sight, which are a Dolmenwood item. I'm not sure if they are also in Old School Essentials or other old school stuff, but the lenses of sight, these are a pair of lens-shaped crystals of different colors, and if you look through one crystal, you see through the other. I decided that these would be set in monocles, so I described like a little ivory box containing two very finely made gold monocles with crystal lenses. One with a what did I say? One with a pink lens, the other with a turquoise lens. And the players realized their use pretty quickly, and one player immediately stuck one lens on the end of a 10-foot pole and used it to peer around corners, which is exactly the sort of crazy silly use I want. And so that was it for the dungeon. I thought it did a good job. So they went through this, they explored this, they found all the stuff, they defeated the orange sludge, they got the oil paintings, the 4 paintings of was it 4 or was it 5? Yes, they got 4 paintings of an elf, of a male elf, all in different places and different poses, and 1 painting of the Nereid, though they don't know the Nereid painting is, magic yet. After that, let us turn to a map. So this dungeon took place in this hex, just south of HS13, which I think I need to make my mouse capture consistent across all my sources because it's useful to be able to point to things. Anyway, this hex just south of HS15 with the protruding stone loops. So I said the dungeon was kind of set into the cliff face there. They then climbed along the cliff to get onto the island and have been making their way around the southeastern edge to make their way around to HS19, which is the ancient ruined elven city, and that's where the ships go carrying adventurers to go and explore the islands to get treasure. So if they can get back to HS19, they will be safe. Along the way, they've had some encounters. I did make one mistake in setting things up with the map, which maybe I shouldn't have done. And so if you look at this map here, you'll see all the hexes are, you'll see most of the hexes are numbered, but not all of them are. There are some around the outside, there's kind of northeast corner one here. There's some on the west side. There's the hex where I set the dungeon, and the ones immediately southwest of that, which are not numbered. And I figured this map, this is the player's map, so this is the what the island actually looks like. The GM map only has the numbered hexes. Right, so the GM map is smaller. And obviously only the numbered hexes are detailed. So only the numbered hexes have random encounters and points of interest and so on. So I gave the players a blank hex map based off the shape of this player map, and so they've actually been moving through a bunch of unnumbered hexes on their way around because they've been hugging the coast. So I've not really been able to give them points of interest. I did move one over from an adjacent hex, and I have been rolling for encounters. They've had a couple of encounters, but so far their journey through the island has been quite safe and dull, which isn't really what I wanted. Though I think this problem will be solved sooner rather than later. So one of the things I want to get to them before they escape the island is this field guide to Hot Springs Island. This is written as an in-universe book, which I think is super cool. It has kind of what adventurers have supposedly seen about all of the flora and fauna of the island, what they know about the factions. We've got lore, so we have letters from NPCs in the setting. It's a really cool thing, and the physical book also looks really nice. And the idea is very much that the players get this book at some point, and they can use it to help figure out what's going on. The intended way of playing this game is when the players encounter something weird, you never name it, you just describe it, and then the players open the field guide and flip through and are Okay, so you say it's like a kind of hovering like cloud of rock. Is it glowing? How many arms does it have? And I'll say, yeah, it's kind of glowing with the blue lights. If you look at it, it looks like it's kind of got like two arms, and one player's like, aha, I think it's an obsidian digger, and then the other player's like, oh, is that dangerous? What do we do? So I think this is really cool. The players do not have this book yet because they haven't joined the Adventurers Guild. I want them. I'm going to put an encounter in the way next session, or possibly the session after, where they will find a dead adventurer who has this book in his backpack, and then I can give them the PDF, and it will be awesome. And then, of course, they'll see this map, and they will naturally wonder, why are only some of the hexes numbered? I'll say, I don't know. You'll have to ask someone at the Adventurers Guild, or ask an adventurer or something. They'll ask someone, and then the NPC can respond saying that, oh, there's just not much going on at the coast. So when they made the map, they just didn't bother putting anything down for those spots. And then the players will say, oh, that makes sense. That's why it was so safe when we walked through there. And so the problem of them moving through a bunch of safe hexes will be resolved. They'll know that the actual adventure is in the island interior without me having to kind of tell them that GM voice out of game. It will become apparent to them through this in-world artifacts, which is quite fun. Right, so let's look at my notes for the session. Here we go. That's the entirety of my notes for what happened in this session. There's a fair bit of prep. Obviously I prepared a whole dungeon. I rekeyed a dungeon and came up with NPC and whatnot. But the actual notes I took in the session are very brief. And this is my general style of note-taking. I'll have like a set of bullet points for each day. Ideally very brief bullet points, only the things I need. Like the things I definitely need. I'm not a fan of big detailed notes. So on the 5th, they explored the dungeon. They defeated the blob. He'll be back. They got all the pictures. That's all I need to know. They then spent the rest of that day and the next few days trying to make their way around to HS19 over here. So they kind of followed the coast northeast a few miles to get into the jungle. When they got into HS13 here, this is a numbered hex. The encounter they had and the point of interest they encountered is they got to HS1302, the decaying statue, which says, the weathered torso of an elven woman rises nearly 50 feet out of the ground, ringed by sapopa bushes. The branches of the dark green bushes sag beneath the weight of an abundance of fuzzy orange blooms. The statue's left arm is outstretched, palm up, as if it is attempting to help a fallen person rise. We've got a bit of backstory about it, and we're also told magic users within 2 miles of the statue, so magic users in this hex, as it uses 2-mile hexes, experience exceptional mental clarity, recover magical powers at twice the normal rate, and have their spells amplified by 50%. So, as the players moved into this hex, into HS13, I described to the wizard that somehow they felt more like magically in tune with the universe. But they didn't actually get to the statue because we had a random encounter, and the tool I'm using for random encounters here is pretty nice. So let's just bring up the browser again. So this is the Hot Springs generator on technicalgrimoire.com, and Hot Springs Island has pretty intense encounter tables. So let's just find those. So we have different encounter tables for the sort of terrain the PCs are in. We then have different encounter tables for each sort of thing. So if you're in light jungle and you roll an 8 to a 14, you get a beast. You then need to roll 3d6 on the beast table. You need to roll 3d6 for how many are appearing. You might need to roll further dice for that. We have different tables for all of these different things. Some of the factions have specific tables. It's a lot of rolling to work out the random encounters in Hot Springs Island. And so thankfully there is this online tool, the Hot Springs generator, to do that for you. So this hex, HS13, is, if I look at my island map, it is heavy jungle. So I can click overland, heavy, and here we've got an encounter. So we have one seeker, that would be a Vidorak seeker, which is a type of bug. It is lost/searching. We've got a little bit about what it is. So it is 1 foot long, it has a 2 foot wingspan, and a large butt. It moves very quickly. They can sense warm-blooded creatures. They do rapid flyby attacks. They spit out clouds of itchy powder, which numbs and paralyzes. And there are 5 Vidarax Swarmers with it, also lost and searching. And of course, if you don't like this, you can just keep clicking through. So it could have giant rats, or more giant rats, or a boar fleeing or in pursuit of 2 other boars, which are walking. So this one is kind of interesting. Since the 2 boars here are walking, this first boar is probably fleeing, so maybe there's like a territorial dispute here, right? Where 3 boars came together and 2 of them chased off the 3rd, which is now running away. We've got an NPC encounter. We have a cleric who is fleeing or in pursuit of 2 bolt foragers, which are kind of vulture-like things, except they can cause you to actually rot away before they eat you. Engage in a territorial display. So, again, the natural interpretation here would be that he is that these bolt foragers, because they're pretty big, are putting on like a territorial display and scaring off this guy. But maybe we have 2 bolt foragers engaged in a territorial dispute, and we have this cleric who is creeping up on them for some reason. Maybe he's like actually a hunter, a cleric hunter. We've got ogres of different types in combat in this case, so it's quite a lot, and it's very good having this tool. The encounter the players actually had was 3 ogres working, and where am I? This I was looking for. Here we go. I decided that these 3 ogres were trying to dig up the statue because they want to move it to their village where its magic boosting powers will help their shaman. So I described the players hearing like the sounds of like tools hitting earth and like grunts of exertion, but grunts from something really big because the ogres here are like 10, 11 feet tall. And the players decided to just back off and not engage with that, which was pretty smart, as the ogres are not that fond of outsiders. Then they got through a few more hexes without really anything happening. They did, again, see a few more things, but either not nearby. They heard some creatures fighting like nearby, but off their path. They encountered a boar digging for roots beneath a tree, and they just kind of like held up their weapons to make themselves look big and like circled around the boar as the boar bristled its fur and kind of rotated to keep them in its eyesight, and so they all kind of stared each other down as they made their way around it. But then in Hex, I want to say we're in the one southeast of HS22 at this point. Yeah, southeast of HS22. They encountered a salamander, which is a type of fire elemental in this setting, pursuing a water imp. I described the water imp as a kind of big, blobby kind of guy with like no distinguishing features, just like a vaguely person-shaped blob of water like splashing through the trees. The salamander did not catch the water imp. The players kind of hid as they watched this happen. And then made themselves known after that. Now, normally, elementals are not too... like, fire elementals are not too friendly. Salamanders, in particular, we can see that they... They like asserting dominance. They're very competitive. They're not particularly bright. I think we have a bit more in the Dark of Hot Springs Island as well. Essentially, they're not very friendly with adventurers. Yeah. They're not very friendly, but they can be won over because they're a bit dumb. However, for this one, the random encounter I rolled up was that this particular salamander is unhappy with how things are going on the island. He thinks that we're not focusing on the war with the water elementals enough. He thinks that these salamanders need to refocus. And one of the players, or their characters rather, speaks the language of fire elementals. So that backstory, plus knowing the language, plus a good reaction roll, meant that this salamander was kind of cautiously friendly, or at least neutral, not hostile. They had a bit of a conversation. They handed over the 2 fire elemental lamps they got from the dungeon. And this salamander said, "You should come meet the boss," gesturing back at the volcano, because the boss always likes to meet the adventuring sort. And that's kind of where we left off. So it is morning of the 7th of Saranith. They've been talking to this salamander, who's called Trouble. All the salamanders have like gangster nicknames, but that's their actual name. Let me get my list of names up. So salamander names I've got, we have Comet, Sugar, Frosty, Diamond, Wiggles, Vulture, Mugs, Trouble, Dutch, and Bucket. This one is called Trouble. And so the situation is, only one character can speak to Trouble, the others don't know the language. Trouble is there negotiating with our wizard. The party have been invited to this party at the new moon, but that is still some weeks away. And we have a little bonfire with 2 fire elemental cores in it, waiting for those cores to kind of be re-inhabited by their elementals. So what I want to do, as for my session prep, is essentially work out what happens next. So I have a few points that I noted at the end of the session. So just a recurring thing for every session that's in my templates. As you can see, it's also here in session 2 notes, even though I've not done session 2 yet, is how are they doing for wealth, gear, magic items? Does anything need placing next time? And that's because Hot Springs Island is very vague about where treasure is. It's kind of everywhere, so it's up to the GM to decide whether they should just include a piece of treasure. But the treasure that exists in the setting is all very strange. It's mostly utility items, or like very... even utility is a bit of a stretch. It's all items that have very weird potential uses. There's very, very little. In fact, there might not even be a single just straight up like +2 sword or whatever on Hot Springs Island. But of course you need magic weapons and armor if you're fighting high-level monsters. So I will need to consciously recognize, the players have advanced to the point where they are trying to fight things that have immunities to mundane damage. I need to make sure they will find a magic sword or something in the near future. And that's kind of a bit of a change from Ardenvoul, because Ardenvoul, it has treasure all over the place and it's mostly useful. Whereas Hot Springs Island treasure is mostly weird. But I think we're fine. They're only level 1. They've got some cool magic lenses, which they've already been using to their advantage. So I think it's fine, even if they don't have any magic weapons at this point. Something I want to have is that Ruston, the NPC with them, notices that the Nereid painting is actually alive. And I think I know how this is going to happen. So what I'm thinking is they have 5 paintings, and there's 4 of them, 3 PCs and Ruston. So Ruston, being a kind of dirty scumbag thief, when they next camp for the night, which isn't going to be for a while, as it is first thing in the morning at this point, but when they next camp for the night, Ruston is going to take out I'm going to say Ruston starts taking out the... So let's just play this out. So a way I tend to like to prep is... I like to just narrate scenes to myself, and then it might, of course, not happen like that in session, but it's how I think things through. So the party finishes another day of traveling through the island and set up camp for the night. As they prepare the tent, as one person prepares the tent, another gets a campfire going. Ruston puts down this sack of oil paintings he's been carrying, leans it against a tree and starts taking them out one by one. He then, as he's doing so, he looks at each one and admires it a bit and puts it down before taking the next out of the sack, and he says, I don't mean to cause any trouble here, but I can't help but think, well, we're going to get up here eventually about the, not to put too fine a point, about the division of the spoils. I mean, there's 4 of us, but there's 5 of these here paintings, and I just wondering... Ruston screams, in surprise, and falls over backwards. The players look around, and they see that he has taken out the 4 paintings of the male elf, and they're all out, resting as a tree log, and he has dropped on the floor with the sack still kind of half wrapped around it, the portrait of the woman sat on the bed. But it's changed. Now the woman's is right up against the like front of the portrait, staring forwards, her face filling the frame. What do you do? And so the players will realize, oh, this is a magic picture. The magic character, the wizard, in Dolmenwood rules, wizards can just cast Detect Magic essentially as a ritual. They have a chance of being able to successfully do this. They have a 1 in 6 chance of being able to do it. They can retry as many times as they want. It takes 10 minutes for each attempt. But even so, it's pretty obvious this is a magic picture. So how I'm going to handle this is the wizard is also a half-elf, and the Nereids hate elves because it was elves who trapped them here. So the players are all going to gather around this picture, obviously. I'll describe it as it still is unmoving. There's like no activity or anything in there. It's like the picture has just changed, like to a different scene. When the wizard comes into view, the eyes of the woman in the picture immediately shift to look at the wizard. And they all realize that she's looking at the wizard's pointed ears. But then she won't, the Nereid won't like interact in any other way. They can't speak through the painting or anything. They have to get her out of the painting. If they do successfully detect magic, I'll give them a hint as to how to do that. And let me look at my Nereid bestiary here. So the Nereids are pretty tough. They can summon a bunch of aquatic creatures to help them. A Nereidan painting can be freed by ripping the canvas in half. So I'll say if they successfully detect magic, I'll say they feel some sort of like binding or like warding or shielding spell, something of that ilk. But it feels very fragile, as if an intentional action could easily disrupt the spell. You know, it's not telling them how to do it, but it is giving them a hint. And this is honestly the sort of puzzle where I would allow many different attempts to succeed, because I'm seeing this magic as fragile. So if they rip the canvas in half, that would work. I would probably allow like a smaller thing as well to work. So if they do that, the Nereid will pop out and will immediately attack the wizard because the Nereids hate elves. So I don't think I need to make any notes for this scene because I just know how this is going to go down. I'll just add it to my session 2 as under this prep heading here. So when they next camp, Rustin notices an area painting has changed. So let's just run through the sections in my prep. So I have my intro. This is normally just a session recap, and I will ask one of the players to give a recap. If there's anything else I need to bring up, like any rules clarifications or anything, I'll cover this in this intro bit as well. I have the state, so what is the date and time and location and just immediate situation. I will cover this after the recap. So here right now they are the 7th of Sarith. It is 8 AM. They are southeast of HS 22. So they're in this unnumbered hex here. They are with trouble by a bonfire, in which 2 fire elemental cause burn. I need to know, in case I didn't put this down. Yes, the other 2 things I care about here are, I want to cause some trouble to make them grateful for the field guide. Ideally, I want the characters to die. And what does Trouble the Salamander do next? What about the fire elemental cause? Let's tackle these in reverse order. So, actually, there's 3 questions here. So what about the fire elemental cause? It does say in here that elementals will resurrect after a while, but I do not know how long that while is, so let's have a look. Death on the physical plane. When an elemental is killed on the physical plane, it returns to its home plane. Its core remains, but becomes dark and lifeless. So these ones are different because they were not killed. I described their cores as like glowing with light, but they're cool. They're cold, which is definitely wrong for a fire elemental. So they're not dead. They're kind of magically contained somehow. If a core is placed in a matching elemental source, a roaring fire, a pool of water, and so forth, there is a cumulative 25% chance per week that the elemental returns. Okay, so this is a very different situation then, because the fire elementals here are not actually dead. I think I don't want to have the players wait here for days for this to happen, really. Although I do want them to spend a bunch of time on the island, so maybe waiting for days is a good idea. So I'm thinking there's kind of two options here. One, I could just say it's like a cumulative 25% chance per hour because they're not dead, they're just kind of trapped. In which case it would take one watch, which is 4 hours. So after 4 hours, the elementals are back. Trouble kind of grabs them both by the scruff of the neck and is like, all right, lads, off with me to the boss, and heads back to the volcano. If I say this is going to take days, then it'll take, up to 4 days. Trouble would probably be fine with that because elementals have a weird perception of time. 4 days passing is basically an instant to an immortal. So Trouble would be fine with that. The players might not be. It does potentially kill two birds. I guess my favorite phrase today is kill two birds with one stone. So something I'm thinking with Trouble is he's not going to accompany them. So he needs an excuse to leave. Like, I could say he has things to do. If resurrecting the elementals, these fire elementals are going to take multiple days, then eventually the players will give up. Trouble will be like, what are you talking about? We've barely wasted any time at all. But the players will leave him behind, and he will remain with the fire elemental cores. That could be the play here. The players don't have enough food, I believe, to stay. Let me check my character sheets, which I'm not going to share on stream because that feels a little bit too personal. Let's just have a look at the character sheets for rations. How much food do they have? Okay, 5 days. 7 days. 8 days. And then how much Rusty had. Okay, so they started the adventure with 10 days of rations, and they have eaten 2 days. Well, no, they've eaten 8 days of rations because there's 4 of them. So actually they're running low on food at this point. They can get more food by hunting and fishing, so they could stick it out, but I think they're probably going to feel pressured to return home. In fact, now that I think about it, at the end of late last session, one player was looking at the route and counting rations and worked out they maybe had just enough if they, hunted along the way. So I think they're not going to be willing to stay up to 4 days for these fire elementals to return. Okay, so let's go with that then. The fire elementals will be back. They have a cumulative 25% chance per day. Trouble is going to stay with them. Just kind of maintaining this bonfire. The players, however, players always want more information. And if there's a vaguely friendly NPC, they're going to try to pump this guy for information. So I need to figure out how this interaction with Trouble is going to go. At least until they decide to leave him. So it would be good to come up with essentially like a total, the total amount of information he's going to give, and then I can abstract the conversation. So So you spend, like 8 hours or whatever talking to Trouble, and you get this basic information. I don't want to play out the whole conversation. So the Fire Elemental Cores, they are going to resurrect on, let's roll a die. I use the Google dice roller a lot. You can search for roll dice in Google. Thankfully, this isn't AI yet. It is still just a regular die roller. Okay, 4 days. So resurrect in 4 days. That'll be the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. So let's go back to my GM notes and let's just quickly run through this tab of my notes as well. So for every campaign, I generally just keep session notes, and then I have fairly brief GM overview, which one of the big things is a timeline of events. So what is going to happen over the next, just forever? What are all the things that will happen should the players not change things? And this is a list I maintain and check religiously, and it is very important because I think having time advance and things happen regardless of what the players do is a big step towards making a setting feel real. Let's also note down the next new moon party will be we appear to have we have 4 days of the new moon. So the new moon is the 29th. Let's go with that. It's kind of the second day. Okay, so the new moon is the 29th. Do we have the new moon party then? So you can see I have some handy links at the top. I have the links to the generator I'm using. I have the link to the calendar. I also have a link to Miro and the Google Drive. I've taken those off for the purposes of this stream because, they're links that anyone can follow to get to those things. I then have my house rules. So the players, they have this player's guide that we've seen before. But then my rules, I just put all of them all in Obsidian. So for getting lost, this procedure is actually described in the Dark of Hot Springs Island. I just copied it into here, so I don't need to keep looking it up. I've got some rules about searching for points of interest, about encounters, the weather. I'm quite happy with this weather house rule I found. I got it off Reddit. So weather in Hot Springs Island is important, I think, because the player is outdoors. The players will be out camping a lot. But it's also tropical location. So I decided that it should kind of flip between short periods of being cool and dry and long periods of being warm and humid, with changes preceded by storms. Well, I say I decided. This is the system I copied from some Reddit thread. I just kind of tweaked things a little. And so the way the weather is going to work is if it is currently cool and dry, every morning there's a 1 in 6 chance of it actually flipping to storms. If it is warm and humid, every morning there's a 1 in 12 chance of it flipping to storms. And if it is storms, we have D3 days of high winds and heavy rain, and then it changes type to the opposite of whatever it was before. So the players are currently in a warm and humid period. In fact, I think I need to add that to my notes. So I decided weather there, but I think it's going to be here in the state. Warm and humid. So yeah, the key details for the states of the game, I think, are the date, the time, the location, and the weather. That's the bare minimum. Also, if there's an active situation ongoing, I need to know that as well. So it is the 7th of Saranith, 8 AM. They're in what I've called Hex 6-4 on the map I've given to the players. It is actually southeast of HS22. It is warm and humid. They're with trouble by a bonfire in which 2 fire elemental cores burn. Right, so they'll resurrect on the 11th. We have Trouble. What does Trouble do next? I think he's going to stay with the cause. And yeah, I think that answers that. I'd be very surprised if the players decide to wait like 4 days with him. I suppose I should possibly consider that option. Nah, they're not going to stay 4 days with him. That's just nuts. Okay, talking with Trouble. What could they get from him? So, the salamanders in Hot Springs Island, they are not very smart. They are very competitive. And they are part of a faction that is actively at odds with another faction. So the players are gonna get a pretty biased view of things from Trouble. In fact, the faction that Trouble belongs to is, in a sense, the bad guys of the setting. Not the big bad, I suppose. Yeah. The leader of Trouble's faction is the closest thing to a big bad in Hot Springs Island. All the factions have bad things going on with them, but this faction, they're the most straightforwardly bad. So it's kind of interesting that the first faction the players met and are having a conversation with are the bad guys. So I'm going to get a pretty biased view. What would Trouble tell them? So the salamanders. So, salamanders, they're cruel and simple creatures whose goals revolve around comfort and not being the low man on the totem pole. They love being bullies. Okay. They are fickle towards adventurers. This is what I was looking for before. They are fickle towards adventurers, fluctuating between ignoring them, killing them, or shaking them down in the absence of specific orders. So none of those things happened because the players got a good reaction roll and one of them spoke specifically the fire elemental language. So Trouble specifically cared, as I said, about did I even note that down particularly? Yeah. Trouble, not very bright, but thinks the boss, which is Svarku and Ifrit, has lost the plot and isn't taking the fight against water seriously. So, talking with Trouble, what would Trouble say? The situation is untenable. The island has too much earth, too much water, too much steam, too much magma. I think water's going to go first. Too much water, too much earth. I suppose there are also ooze elementals. Too much magma. Let's just say it's far too wet. So the situation is untenable. The island is far too wet, and the other elements are pretty bad too. The boss. I think he's never going to name the boss. He's just going to always call him the boss. The boss isn't dealing with it properly. Isn't dealing with it seriously enough. I think it would be really cool if somehow Trouble becomes a leader of a minor faction of Salamander rebels. That would be very funny. But I would like the players to be involved in setting up Trouble in that way. So let's see. Let's go for let's have those be separate points. There are others who feel like that, not many. It's not just trouble. Let's see. So other factions who would trouble warn them about. So there's some ogres. Let's see, the ogres to the north. So there are ogres to the north. They're aggressive. Keep away from them. They're aggressive. They kill lots of us. I'm trying to avoid ever using the word salamander. I'm actually being silly about it because a salamander probably would call themselves a salamander, but the book does say to describe rather than names. I'm going to try to stick with that as much as possible. So, talking with trouble, the situation is untenable, the island is far too wet, and the other elements are pretty bad too. The boss isn't dealing with it seriously enough. There are others who feel like that. It's not many, but it's not just trouble. There are ogres to the north, they're aggressive, they've killed lots of us. Friends of Fire should stay away. Not sure who to specifically mention the Nereids. Let's see, the ogres north, they're aggressive, they use water. I think that's a key thing. I think it'd be good to get something about lizard men, as there are a bunch of lizard men on the island. And this guy is a lizard, although kind of lizard of elemental fire. How would he feel about the lizard men? I was thinking, like, as a lizard, would he think about them in some specific way? But probably not, actually. I mean, they're creatures from different worlds. It's not like he would see them as being, like, failed salamanders or something. They're totally different. It's not like a chimp is a failed human, for example. I think I probably want... Yeah, that's probably enough, actually. There's an elemental war going on. The boss isn't taking it seriously enough. There are ogres. They use water. They're bad news. Let's look at what the salamanders want and don't want. They want to be tough. They want to go home. They want to be tough. They want more slaves. They want to be the bully. They do not want to be sent home early for bad behavior. They don't want to be bullied. They don't want to work too closely or frequently with those obsidian things, being the obsidian giants. And they don't want the situation with the ogres to last much longer. The salamanders are getting slaughtered out there. They particularly like raw boar meat. They find it intoxicating. I think I want to get across the fickle nature somehow. And does the field guide have anything in particular about what they do? I'm sure somewhere there's something about what the salamanders do for fun, like competitions. Okay, they're not terribly bright, and their pride transforms otherwise mundane competitions, such as skipping rocks over lava, killing rats, and so on, into memorable and intense events. Despite their competition, they only rarely kill each other and frequently engage in extreme self-congratulatory behavior even after multiple failures. Okay, I definitely need to get that across. Definitely. So they're going to talk for a little bit, and then the way I will have him stop just giving out information for free is he will challenge them to some sort of contest. possibly a race. Let's have a look what is on the map. It would be fun if I could use this as a way to draw them deeper into the island. Okay, could we somehow get to HS 18 or 11? What is in those places? So HS 18, the Lava River. Okay. And HS 11 is the Lava Fall, which is actually a Nereid location, apparently. Oh, yes, there's a dungeon behind it. I feel like a simple way to try to entice them further into the island would be like a race to one of those places. Or Trouble might say that the elemental cores they've got, they should chuck them into some lava. I don't know. Magma elementals are different to fire elementals. What else have we got around here? So what's in 22, 21, and 25? 21, doesn't sound particularly fiery. 22. Mm-hmm. 25 definitely sounds too watery, although what's this one? The Split Rock, a large outcrop of grey rock, pisted with shallow holes, sporting a black vertical stripe up its side, thrusts up from the eastern slope of a small hill surrounded by snapping grass. A patch of yellow ferns spreads 15 feet higher up the slope, and a number of spider bushes wander near the tree line. There's a pirate cache hidden there. Okay, that's 25. Race to the... Okay, let's see. Competitive. Mercurial. I think he's just gonna get really intense about suggesting they head up to the Magma River and have a contest of skipping rocks over magma. And he'll be insulted if they turn him down. So games for Trouble, go to HS18 and skip rocks over magma. So potential some more encounters there, and also yeah, it's heading deeper into the island. A race of some sort, I think. Race to the Magma River. What is it? Lava River HS 1801. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So we'll have two potential games over here in HS18, which is 4 miles away from where they currently are. It would take a while to get there. So a race to get there. Trouble would win the race because natives of the island move faster. so they're not likely to take him up on that. And also go there and skip rocks over magma. Let's see, like an archery contest. And for the fire elemental cores, yeah, they're going to take days, but Trouble will just describe that as soon. So I feel like the players might stay with Trouble for a day, but then after a day of, oh yeah, it'll be soon, don't worry about it, and like nothing happening, they might move on after a day at most. So I think that's Trouble dealt with. And then I want to cause some trouble. It's kind of funny. Trouble the salamander and trouble the noun. Cause some trouble that'll make them grateful for the field guide. So I'm hoping this will just naturally happen as they move along. Like you can just have an encounter become quite dangerous for them. So let's see, where are they going to move? Their plan was to continue like moving around the south end of the island here and then like up over here. So let's look at these hexes. So kind of moving through like 25, 24, 23, and 19. So we have the Nereid's Crystal Sea Cave. Okay, so there is a large river pouring over sheer cliffs and into the ocean below. So, a large river 150 feet across. Okay, so that's an obstacle they will encounter. Right. Let's see. I may need to remove a hex from my map then if there is a river there. Let me consult my Hot Springs Island Miro. Yeah, I have this hex southeast of HS25 on my map, but actually they can't go there. Let's have a look at HS24 as well. Okay, so they could potentially make their way over here. Yeah, it is a little hard to see, but it looks like the waterfall in HS25 is actually in HS25. It is just before crossing into the hex southeast, just like the isometric nature of the map makes it look like there is stuff there. Whereas what the one southeast of HS24 is genuinely there. So I will remove this from my map. And I will inform the players that it's going to mess up the thing. No, it's fine. Okay, right. Let's just draw stuff again. You can't see what I'm doing at the moment because I don't want to share the actual Miro board that my players use because they put their notes on that, and that feels kind of weird to share on stream without asking them if I specifically can first. I don't really want to ask because again it just feels weird sharing the specific details of my campaign. Like going through prep stuff, that's useful for everyone, even if you're not a player in my game. So that's good to go through. But the specific details of the campaign, because they're not an actual play, I don't really want to go through that. So no Miro board for you. But I'm just adjusting my hex map to remove this one that you can't actually get to because there is a river and a waterfall in the way. Okay, that's done. I'll just share an updated map with them via Discord. So this is the sort of thing that I could cover at the start of the session in the like the intro bits, along with the recap and whatnot. But if I'm kind of retconning something, which I'm not really retconning because they've not been to that hex yet, but I'm adjusting the shape of the world, which is kind of the same sort of thing. I like to share that before the session because, obviously the players are limited in what sort of planning they can do between sessions, but they do still think about things. So it's good to know. It's good for them to know if something that they may have taken into account is different. Okay, right. So I'll just note now that I do need to cover this, but yeah, I'll do it beforehand. So intro, deleted. Hex, whatever it was on my map, 7-2. As the waterfall in Hex 6-3. Yeah, there we go. Okay, that's that. Right, some trouble making grateful for the field guide. So if this hex southeast of HS25 is gone, I think naturally they'll then cut across the island rather than go 25 and then follow the coast, and then maybe they will follow the coast. In any case, it's fairly easy to rule out the hex southeast of HS24 because I can just say, it is what it looks like. There's, wide rivers and rocks, a big waterfall tumbling over the island that you can cross, but you need to construct some sort of bridge. But anyway, they'll effectively be going through 25, 24, 23, and then 19. So let's have a look at what is going on. So we look at 25, they'll see the river, they'll need to get across the river somehow. Okay, so river, 150 feet across. They might have to they might actually have to cross into HS22 to get around that then. What's in 22? Yeah, it doesn't specifically say about a river up here, but looking at the map, it looks like it's kind of both wider and more jagged up here, so maybe you can actually cross through a shallower portion in HS22 and kind of get back down into HS25. So something that I personally find a little bit difficult with hex crawls is obviously that the hex map is an abstraction, and the idea is it doesn't really matter where exactly in the hex the players are, right? You're in the hex or you're not in the hex. But then you have features that are obstructions like rivers, and these do not run along the hex border. So if they're in HS25, on the one hand, it's not supposed to matter which side of the river they're on. On the other hand, the river is an impassable obstacle, so it does matter very much which side they're on. And I find it a little hard to reconcile that. It's like we drop out of the abstraction of the hex map in certain situations, which doesn't feel great. But anyway. Okay, so 25, they'll have to go up into 22, I guess. 22, I think they can just cross because it doesn't mention there's a massive river. So let's say they have two potential routes, really. They could go up into 22 and then across, or up over into 25, up into 22, back down into 25, and then across. So there's a few hexes to look at. Let's just look at this whole 19 to 24 range and see what's going on here. This is actually how I prep for prepared settings a lot. So I'll just read things through and just have a picture in my mind of how all these things work, and then just kind of improvise on the fly what happens. So 19, this is Hot Springs City, which we have more detail on. So I'll probably read through that off stream because it's kind of dull just to read through prep details. Okay, we've got some falls in 20. 20 is over here. That's fine. It looks entirely passable. Mm-hmm. We have 21, which also looks entirely passable. Okay. And 20 already looked at. Okay, I think I can just like improvise this from the short descriptions we got. Where's 24? 24 is here. Okay. Yeah, I think I can do this. I know enough. I've read through this book enough that I kind of know what's going on, and so I can just read like a description of a point of interest and improvise the rest. Okay. So I think to make them grateful for the field guide, I'll just have an aggressive encounter. They've not actually had an aggressive encounter since leaving the dungeon. There have been things kind of nearby them in the jungle that they've been able to just not engage with. There was a boar that confronted them, but the boar didn't want to fight, and so they didn't want to fight, and so they're able to just kind of circle around it. And they encountered trouble, which was potentially going to be a dangerous encounter, but they got a good reaction roll, so that wasn't dangerous after all. So I'm just going to make a note. I want to have an aggressive encounter. And I'm going to focus, like, if it seems like a character is going to die in this, I'm going to try to focus damage on Ruston, the NPC. Because I generally play enemies as, like, what would make sense for them, right? So if it's like a predatory animal, it's going to go for the weakest person and try to like take them down and then drag their body off to eat. If it's an intelligent enemy, they're going to focus on like spellcasters and archers, like anyone who's capable of dealing damage from a safe location. Because we're all level 1 characters and this is the first time on the island, I just want... I'm kind of inclined to like spare the PCs, given that we have an NPC with us. But I do think a character dying is a good way to highlight that the island is dangerous. They felt the danger when they were in the dungeon, but on the island so far it's been fairly safe. But I want someone to die. I want someone to die and to be killed by something that the players are like, what is that? I don't know what that is, based on my out-of-game knowledge of things. So it'll be fun if, let's say, Ruston is killed by a... let's say a blind fire carpet, for instance. This thing is basically a roper, but it's a plant. It has big tentacles. It is bad news. It is actually one of the more dangerous creatures on the island. I've made this a 10 hit die creature, so there's absolutely no way that they could defeat this. And these things just roam around all over the place. So the players... they're just walking through the jungle, and then suddenly a series of vines just lash out of a tree, grab Ruston, and immediately deal 8d6 damage to him. Like, Ruston's a level 1 character. Ruston has 4 hit points. Ruston will just be torn in half and eaten. I think that's a good way to highlight, oh, things are actually pretty dangerous here. That could also be a bit off-putting, though. Like a 8 attack creature with the +8 to hit. So maybe a Blind Fire Vine, which is a level 3 version of it. It is much weaker, but still quite tough compared to what the players currently are. This has 4 vines. It has +2 to hit and does 1d3 damage. So that's going to be, 4d3? Which is an average of... I mean, it's going to be more than whatever his health was, 4. Yeah, that's an average of 14 damage if they all hit. Which, let's see, what's the chance of them hitting? So it has a +2 to hit. And Ruston has an AC of 9. So, it has like a 7 in 20 chance of hitting. Okay, so let's see. That's, do some quick maths. Just curious how many rounds he would survive. So, sorry, 7 in 20 chance of missing it. So if it's rolling a d20 plus 2 and it wants to get at least a 9, right? That's, yeah, okay. So that's a 13 in 20 chance of hitting, 65% chance, times the average damage of a d6, which is, what, 3.5? Pretty sure that's the mean damage. Yeah, the mean damage of a d6 is 3.5. So the mean attack of this Blind Fire Vine is dealing 2.275 damage, and it gets 4 attacks. So its mean damage is going to be 9.1 per round versus Ruston, and Ruston has 4 hit points. So even if, like basically nearly half his attacks miss, it will still kill him. Most likely. So I think that would be a good thing to show off. The players will see, oh, this thing only has a +2 to hit, so it's not so tough, compared to enemies we faced in previous campaigns. But it does have 4 attacks. So it is like higher level than us. It's a dangerous threat. That would be a good thing. And this is what the Blind Fire Vine looks like, by the way. So it's a much smaller version of the Blind Fire Carpets. So I will note that down. So let's say I want to have... have an encounter with the Blind Fire Vine. Target Ruston. I think that's good. I normally don't fudge encounter rolls, but we're still kind of in the learning the setting period of the game, and will be for the next few sessions. So I think, like I ran kind of a teaching dungeon in session 1. I'm going to run like a teaching random encounter in session 2. I think session 3 would probably be a good time to give them the field guide to Hot Springs Island. I definitely want to get it to them before they leave the island for the first time, though. So I'm going to have to... and that's only partially in my control, right? I can slow down the period of time, the pace of time, rather, but at some point the players are going to be like, why is it taking so long for us to, navigate, like, 5 hexes? So I may have to give them the field guide next session, but I would prefer to do it in session 3. And I think that's all my prep done, pretty much. I need to fill out some metadata here so that our session's taking place on the 7th, which is tomorrow, is also the 7th of Saranith. In-game and real-world dates are kind of the same. Right, so my prep for next time. When the next camp, Ruston is going to notice that the Nereid painting has changed, so hopefully, I guess this means Ruston survives at least one day. I do want Ruston to be the one to discover the painting has changed, because the players are unlikely to do so. You'll only notice if you take the paintings out of the sack, and the players are not going to do that. I don't really want them to get back to town and then discover the painting has changed, because there's lots of other people around, and they can just like ask for advice. I want them to have to figure this out themselves when they're away from civilization. So, when the next camp, Ruston notices the painting has changed. That's going to be like in the evening. So first thing today is going to be talking with Trouble. So he'll give them a bit of information about the situation on the island. He thinks it is untenable. The island is far too wet. The other elements are pretty bad as well, and the boss isn't dealing with it seriously enough. There are ogres to the north. They're aggressive. They use water. They've killed a lot of us. Friends of Fire should stay away. So this is hopefully going to prejudice the players against the ogres a little bit. at least until they realise that the salamanders are also the bad guys. He's going to propose a series of games and be increasingly like grumpy when if they refuse, or he's going to gloat massively if he wins. He's not going to come across as like a particularly sportsman like person. Those games are going to be a race to HS18. So 2 hexes to the north. The players will definitely turn that down because there's a good chance of getting lost. Or go to HS18, which again they're probably going to turn down unless they go with him. Skip rocks over magma. If they go with him, there'll be encounters along the way. Or an archery contest, that could happen here in the current hex. They'll probably take him up on that. The fire elemental cores are going to take days to recover. Trouble will describe this as soon. And yes, the next day, I suppose, I'll have this encounter with the Blind Fire Vine. And they'll find the field guide, ideally next session. So I think that is my prep done. As you can see, not really that much. It's just thinking about the state of the game and noting down some like points I want to hit. And I would have done this not really as like a sit-down session. Normally I'm just thinking about the game all the time, and I just kind of jot things down from time to time. But I've been playing Stardew Valley all this week. So I'm going to step away for a few moments to refill my drink, and then we will have a look at what I'm considering running for the next campaign, Kal Arath, which is a solo and group like sword and sorcery hex crawling game, which I don't really know anything about other than it is apparently quite good. So we'll be back shortly to have a look at this. Okay, let's look at this. And not gonna have a super detailed look. Initially, I was thinking maybe we can like read the whole thing and try some stuff out like I did with Astro Prisma. But honestly, I'm feeling really out of it today after all the Stardew Valley streaming this week. So just gonna have like a quick flip through, I think. Share some initial thoughts, and then probably end it. Hello, welcome to the stream. I've come on a very bad day as I've been doing a lot of Stardew Valley this week, and I'm feeling quite out of it. But let's have a look at Kal Arath and see what is going on here. I've heard it's a good game, but I don't really know anything about it. It is by Castle Grief, and there are 2 other supplements for it as well that I've got. There is the Valley of the Black Ziggurat and Lords of the Pit. That's all on DriveThruRPG as pay what you want. So, sadly, there's no PDF bookmarks, which is always a thing I dislike. But at least the table of contents is hyperlinked, so it's not so too bad. Let's see. The 1 page of rules, that looks pretty nice. Okay, let's see what the gist of this system is. Greetings, wanderer of wild and treacherous lands, seeker of glory and power untold. You have set your foot upon the perilous path into a savage land, a realm where ancient demons demand sacrifice and vie for power, and mortals strive against one another with blood magic and steel. This massive steppe is known to its people as Kal Arath, although the barbarians of the north refer to this vast grassland as the Kurg. Okay, sounds very sword and sorcery. Stony plateau city of Kareld, heart of the Khanate of Akai, the demon lord of Kal Arath. Warlords with battle barges sailing a sea of grass and stone. Okay. It's got like land ships, that's cool. Monks and mystics drunk on the rotting blood of human sacrifice. Martial arts. Yep, this is super sword and sorcery. Alright, Sand, this is Kal Arath. Who will you be? How will you die? And this is meant for both solo and group play with no prep, which I like, because obviously I was playing Across 1,000 Dead Worlds as the last campaign, which is a very rules-heavy system. Okay, let's see. So it just uses d6s. Okay, I like the gist of this. Sounds fun. Character generation is quick. Little concern with balance or worrying about power levels. Okay, that's fine. I like this guy, whatever he is, a kind of super muscular cow man. That's like that face is kind of a cow/dog mix, I think. A cool little guy. Okay, we have strength, toughness, agility, intelligence, and presence. This feels very Mork Borgy, right? Does it mention Mork Borg as an influence? Yeah. The games this rule set was inspired by were Barbaric, I don't know about that, Mork Borg, which is the rule set these adventures started out using, and Black Sword Hack. I like Black Sword Hack. Okay, so I like... I'm kind of ambivalent on Mork Borg, but I do like Black Sword Hack, so interesting. Yeah, I guess it's a Minotaur. Okay. So pretty simple rules. Point buy. You get 1 XP per session. Okay. When do you level up? Each level requires that many XP to attain it. Okay, so assuming you start at level 1, after 2 sessions you would become level 2. And it would then be 3 more sessions to get to level 3, and so on. Okay. skills broken into categories. We have warrior, rogue, mystic, and explorer. But it doesn't say that you can only choose from a certain list, so I guess it's classless, so you can just choose. Okay. Character receives a fate point. They can use it as a once per session reroll. Okay. Yeah, very simple system. That sounds like in Mörk Borg they're called omens, which do the same thing. Okay, so yeah, mechanically sounds very simple. And the Mörk, the combat sounds very Mörk Borgy as well. So D6 plus agility for initiative, side-based initiative. Yep, all player-facing roles. Yeah, it does sound very much like Mörk Borg. Okay. All right, let's get on to the actual like solo play rules. Let's jump back to the table of contents. Okay, gameplay. Guess that's what I'm looking for. This gameplay should be how it generally works. Oracle will be the solo tools. Overland travel and dungeons will be more specific things, and that's the table of contents. So it's page 20 onwards. We want to have a quick look through. Okay, what fate brought you here? Oh, that's it. That's the gameplay section. This can be used to determine your starting adventure / main story quests. You can add other quests and adventures as you play. So this helps determine your character's motivation. So let's say I rolled a 2. This is 2 to 12, so I guess it's a 2d6 table. Get a 2. Slavers came to your village and burned it down, taking some of your people with them. Find them, rescue your people, and exact a terrible vengeance. It sounds very Conan. And that's a pretty vague quest. Let's see what it says about how we actually play. Okay, so we've got the yes/no oracle. Yep, words to help you figure things out. It's pretty standard. Okay, overland travel. Use a blank hex map. Each hex represents 1 day's travel by foot, so about 20 miles. A horse can double this, so you're able to move 1 hex per day, and it represents a very large area. We roll for encounters and things based on days rather than hexes, so if you spend multiple days in the same hex, you're more likely to encounter things, okay? Weather, which affects the various other rolls we might make. Lots of weather. I like weather. A good weather table is great for adding flavor to a game. Very sword and sorcery names for these things. Zarum. And then we journal what happened at the end of every day. Okay, so I guess the gameplay loop is these are numbered. So every day you would roll for weather. Roll for if you're getting lost. So you work through these steps one at a time. Yes, you can choose to skip things. Like if you don't need to forage, you don't forage. Point of interest. So we have a 4 in 6 chance of nothing. Then 2 in 6 chance of something. Say settlement, which would be yes, all the All the 6 results are settlement. No, okay. So 16 is a dungeon, 26 is a settlement, 36 is a dungeon, 46 is a settlement, 56 is a dungeon, 66 is a settlement. Okay, so all the 6 results are either a dungeon or a settlement, which we have separate tables to roll those up, and we have this table for encounters. Okay, settlements, what's going on with these, so we can determine who's in charge. What's generally going on. It's like a Mad Max-esque character here. Okay, and then this rumors and opportunities is what would help drive further adventures. So if we go into a village and we hear about a violent tribe of a violent nomad tribe nearby causing trouble, we might then say, we will help you out, so I will help you out. Maybe these violent nomads are the slavers who took my family, that sort of thing. Okay, how does the dungeon generation work? So we have a pool of d6s, so the size of the dungeon. So let's say we've got a small dungeon, that means we have 3 areas. That means we'll have 3 d6s. And an area isn't necessarily a room, it could be a floor, a room, a large cavern, section of corridors, and so on. We roll all the dice. The position of the dice relative to each other represents the layout of the areas. Closer dice are directly connected. Further dice may require passages or stairs or additional areas to connect. For these major gaps, you can roll another die, determine the passage, or just roleplay. Okay, I'm not a huge fan of rules where the actual physical position of the dice matters. But okay, let's see. So if it's a colossal area, I need 11 d6s. Do I even have 11 d6s? Let me just quickly grab my dice bag. I think I probably do. I have 8 d6s that I normally use for streaming, and I have my other dice as well. Yeah, okay, I do have plenty of dice. But I don't know, rolling 11 dice in my dice tray feels like a bit much, maybe. But okay, so it does sound otherwise interesting. So we've got nice hazards and things. Enemy generator. And then that's the bestiary, so I think that's... yeah. Okay, so it does sound interesting. I'm a little bit wary of that dungeon generation procedure with potentially rolling loads of dice and needing to pay attention to where they land. But otherwise it sounds interesting. I also have this Valley of the Black Ziggurat, which is a supplement. Let's just quickly see what this includes. Expanded skills, magical abilities, items, encounters, points of interest, the jungles of La, a new region to explore, as well as a procedural mega dungeon called the Valley of the Black Ziggurat. Okay. Got some advice on how to play a solo campaign, that's nice. Okay, so I'll probably use the skills and the new skills and rules amendments from this, since presumably this is based on like feedback of people playing the game and just general experience. I like the like fantasy Mad Max vibe the NPCs have got going on. You know, it's not really what I think of when when I think of like sword and sorcery. Like I can definitely see like the inspiration, but it's more Mad Max than I'm used to, which is neat. Okay, was there a table of contents for this? There was, yes. Okay. So, okay, new points of interest. I guess I just bump all these in as well. I've got trading rules. Oh no, this is not hyperlinked. That's terrible. Okay, what are the trading rules? Okay. I think I like the look of this. I also have this other supplement, Lords of the Pits, but this looks like a like for specific sorts of campaign. Okay, I'm leaning towards Kalarath being my next campaign on the channel. Then, so I will read through this in more detail when I am less sleep deprived, and off stream. So probably like Tuesday evening or something. And in any case, I'll decide by Friday whether I'm going to be playing this or my other option, which is Ironsworn. Everyone knows Ironsworn, so I don't really need to go into it. And yeah, I guess that will be it. I'm just really out of it today from all the sleep deprivation and the like 30 plus hours of Stardew Valley I've done this week. So before I just ramble anymore and make this even worse as a stream, I will wrap it up here. Have a break to try to become more alive before getting back into the Stardew Valley Archipelago later today. So thanks for watching and see you next time.